Okay, so what's the most Polish thing about you and the most Canadian thing about you?
Oh, the most Polish thing about me, I guess just like how much I love like all the Polish food, like the pierogies, and like I just like it never gets old, like I can never have enough. So I guess that's like a very Polish thing, but like Canadian thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm a fresh Canadian, so I guess that I go to Tim Hortons a lot.
That is so funny. Yeah. All our Canadian listeners will love that.
And to be fair, like Canadian flag has the same colors as the Polish flag, so there is something that ties both together. But yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome because design is everywhere. So I love that you kind of brought that in this conversation. That's good to know. All right, let's dive into it. I think this is a good segue into the
Oh,
podcast episode for today. So Matt, how are you today?
I'm good. I had a bit of like a morning last minute client crisis, but it's all aborted now, so we're on the right path for the rest of the day.
Mission successful.
Mission accomplished, so we can move on with the rest of the schedule. So I'm good. Now that everything is sorted there, I can just take a breath and relax a little bit and, enjoy the moment. So I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm excited for this episode because we're
Mhm.
talking all about design and mental health. So Matt,
Okay. Yeah.
what is Gust of Wind Studio? What's the story behind the name? What do you do? Tell us everything.
Yeah. Gust of Wind Studio. Well, that's my creative practice. I'm a designer, illustrator, occasionally animator kind of person. And I guess Gust of Wind Studio kind of encompasses everything that I do. And it kind of yeah, it's my digital home for all the creative things that I get up to. The story behind the name, I have two. One is real, one is fake. The fake one is more exciting, so maybe I'll start with that one. Because people always ask me, like, oh, why is it Gust of Wind Studio? Like, what's the story behind it? The truth is, I basically came up with like Gust of Wind as like my blog name when I was
Mhm.
like 18 or something. And there was no reason why. I just liked the sound of it and I kind of kept it going. And then, when I kind of became like a professional, I was like, well, maybe I could just like embody that and kind of
Mhm.
continue my, I don't know, like web presence, online presence under this name. And then it became a studio. But when people ask me, like, what's the story? Because this story is not that exciting, but I love telling this like fake story, which I always tell people it's not true, but I love the idea behind it because when you think of wind, it's something that's invisible, but it makes things move and happen. And I kind of like to think of creativity in that same way, like it's invisible force that makes things happen and creates things. So Gust of Wind Studio is kind of, I could say that if someone really wants to know. But
I
yeah.
mean, I honestly kind of love that because that ties in with your motion design background too.
Hmm.
So I think
Hmm.
that secretly it's probably true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I kind of made it true. Like I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what? I like the sound of that, and it's true. Like I
Yeah.
love the idea of like creativity as this like invisible force that
Mhm.
makes things happen for us, or we make things happen with it, right? So
What a great start. So, how do you think motion design influences your static illustrations now? Because I know majority of your work is editorial design and you do a lot of packaging and murals as well. So,
mhm.
how does that motion design influence it today?
Yeah, it's kind of weird because I mean, I was never meant. So just to give you like a backstory, I have an undergrad in motion graphics. That's what I went to school for, but I kind of did it by accident because I applied for graphic design and that's what I always wanted to do. But the school said like, you know what, you have too much illustration in your portfolio. You
Yeah.
can't be on our graphic design course, but you can do motion graphics if you want. And I was like, I really wanted to get into that school. So I was like, you know what, why not just try it? And I would like learn different software like After Effects and animation. And I just thought of it as like a different kind of skill set that I could gain during my undergrad. And I did that. And then I tried working in animation like full time for like 3 months as a motion designer. And I just couldn't do it. Like it was too much for me. Like just living in After Effects is not really my brain, but I still do quite a bit of motion design on the side here and there. But
Mm.
to answer your question, I think my illustration work has a lot of movement and kind of flow that you could kind of, trace it back to motion in many ways. And when I first kind of went freelance, I did quite a bit of like cell animation and stop frame animation, where you draw every frame by hand. I guess that kind of flow and movement of that you can see in my work today. So maybe there is that kind of connection there for sure.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of my technical background, where every design problem that I approach, because I'm an engineer by training, I kind of have that influence just there in my consciousness. So that's always
Hmm.
there influencing the decisions that I make today.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
yeah, that's awesome. So how long has Gust of Wind Studio been there for? How long have you been an
Yeah.
incorporation, a small business?
I mean, I went freelance when I was 26, 25. So it's
Mhm.
gonna be 10 years this year that I've been kind of going at it solo. I was working as a kind of sole proprietor for the first, I don't know, maybe like 6 or 7 years, and I became an official corporation, I think, in 2020,
Yeah.
which doesn't really change much. I mean, it's just kind of how you do your taxes and how you're seen by the government, right? But really, like, the work itself that I do is kind of the same kind of deal, a lot of illustration and design work. But yeah, it's gonna be 10 years this year, so I have a big anniversary that I really want to celebrate somehow. But
Yeah.
yeah, 10
Yeah.
years.
Congratulations on 10 years.
Thank you.
That's a big deal, a
Thanks.
decade. So what was kind of the aha moment that made you think that you could go freelance, or what was the defining moment that you decided that this is the thing, I'm going to do it and pursue it just by myself?
I mean, when I graduated, I got a full-time job. I was working as a in-house designer for animation production studio, and I loved it. I mean, I learned so much there during my time from the producers, the creative directors, animators, designers, like top talent all around. And I was just kind of surrounded by it every day, and that kind of like really shaped my idea of,
Mm,
I guess, what creativity could be professionally, and kind of like the standard that I always wanted to like live up to, And while I was doing it, I was always kind of doing illustration work on the side, like for small clients or personal work. And I guess I always knew that that was something that really resonated with me, and it was like very close to my heart. But like when you first graduate, you don't really have many clients and you just don't really know how things work. So I just really wanted to kind of get some experience as an in-house person first. And once I kind of knew my ground, I was like, you know what? I've done this for 2 years, and it just felt like I wanted to do more things kind of on my own terms. And it
mm.
was not, I don't know, it was just kind of a bit of like a spontaneous decision, but I had some confidence in that decision, but I had no guarantees. So it was definitely like a hustle kind of everyday thing. But yeah, I've been kind of able to survive and kind of stay
Yeah.
on, yeah,
Stay above the water. I
stay
think
above the water.
that's very admirable. Just diving into it and learning by doing. I think that's what I believe in as well, where if you don't ask for it and if you don't learn by doing it, it's never going to happen. So,
Hmm.
what was one of the things that you had to unlearn going from being an in house designer and going full time?
Something that I had to like unlearn, I guess, just this idea that like I'm not just an illustrator when I'm on my own. I have to also be my sales
Hmm.
rep. I have to be my producer. I have to be my art director, creative director, and accountant. So just kind of like really opening up that umbrella of things that I had to do. So I couldn't just live in like Photoshop and Illustrator and just make pretty imagery, because that's never gonna be enough to have a successful business. So I had to kind of unlearn that like I can't just be one thing, but actually I love being more than one thing. Like, at times it gets like frustrating and annoying, but like I do like the diversity, and I love bringing creativity into business and kind of seeing how I can use creativity as an entrepreneur, really, and kind of see, yeah, just kind of play with it a little bit and not see business as this very rigid numbers game, but more of like a playground for my creativity. So
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah. That's very, very inspirational. I think when people think about running a small business, it's not for everyone, first of all. And
Mhm.
then it's either a success, which how do you even define success? But
Mhm.
then the second question comes up is this something that I can do sort of. So
Hmm.
is that something that has come up in your business journey, which I'm pretty sure running a small business myself, it has come up for me for the past 4 years now. And is that something that has come up for you? And how did you deal with that?
Like kind of questioning if this is something that I should be pursuing? Absolutely. I mean, it comes up often. And, I mean, at one point I got to a place where I actually tried to abandon illustration and become a software engineer. And I very quickly realized that that's completely not my kind of game.
Yeah.
And, I can do a bit of like web design here and there, but to like actually program software and like JavaScript and all that just wasn't my game. But yeah, I mean, the industry is always in flux, things
Mhm.
always change. And especially like post pandemic, our creative industry was definitely feeling the hit of it. And, there were moments when I was like, oh God, like, should I just do something else? But then whenever I try to do something else, somehow like the universe always brings me back on this path. And I'm like, maybe this is just what I should be doing now, and who knows what the future brings. But for now, I don't have any plans to kind of change things up again.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yeah, it comes up often, like where, like client work gets quiet, or you just don't really know when the next project is coming in. You kind of wonder, like, am I doing the right thing? But I don't know. I'm just trying to be a proof to myself that if you are passionate about something and you work hard, you can, I don't know, just make it work. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's been 10 years so far. So let's see if I can do another 10, hopefully.
Yeah, so far so good.
Yeah.
So I know we chatted a little about your design work and everything just being a playground and you diving into the deep end. So can we
Mhm.
talk a little bit more about how you balance the play with your client work?
Yeah, that's another big of my struggle of mine because I come from more of a design background. So it's hard for me to just grab my iPad and be like, oh, let's just play today and see what I can do and just be joyful and happy with my pencil. I have to have like a brief, like a problem to solve. Like that's
Hmm.
just kind of how my brain works. So I don't know. I'm trying to always kind of get a bit loose with my line and like evolve my style, but it's because sometimes I can be a little bit rigid with like my like design background and like layout
Hmm.
and grid and structure.
Yeah.
um but I found like the best way for me to like actually play is to work on personal work that has like a purpose. So like right now I'm working on like an ad campaign that's a personal project, and I came up with all these different concepts and different surfaces for the illustration. So I have like packaging, and I have like a mural and like window displays and different, like, I think for me the key in personal work and like playfulness is actually be playful, but also kind of have like a goal in mind of like where this work could potentially live. So I can also like justify spending my time on work that's not client work that can hopefully become something else in the future, or like lead to more projects like that.
Yeah. So, are
Mhm.
there any habits or rituals that you do when you first start sketching out ideas? Is it like, oh, it's time to create, and like a brain switch flips?
It's kind of weird because I feel like I also approach illustration as like a design project. So I always do like brainstorming, always, even for myself. So I would come up with like a brief and a kind of like written subject and objective of the project. And once I kind of have that, then I go into research mode. So I do a lot of like visual research, and then I'll just grab this like really big sketchbook that I have here, and I just like jot down a lot of like ideas with like
Mhm.
pencil. Like I love tactile like sketching, and once I have that, then I kind of grab my iPad here and I do all my sketching in Procreate. But that's kind of like the typical flow. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. Other than just creative outlets, do we also journal to reflect on how mental health works with design? How do you process more other than just visual work?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot of power in words and writing, or just even saying words and having our intention like spoken out loud. And so yeah, I journal quite a bit. I kind of give myself like a goal of like 3 pages a day. It kind of started from like the book The Artist's Way, where
The
like you
artist
kind of
way.
are
Yeah.
challenge to like do your morning pages. And I don't know, I find like it kind of helps my brain kind of declutter a little bit and
Hmm.
have my start of the day easier and more clear. I don't journal like every day. That's always the goal, but sometimes I don't get to it, But it absolutely helps. And just even writing about creativity, like I started a Substack newsletter where I write about just kind of what's happening. And
Hmm.
I just find writing becomes like a complementary practice to my visual practice because they both complement each other. And like I find that like through thinking and talking and writing about creativity, I actually tend to like evolve slightly over time. Like I keep the stream going, moving
Yeah.
forward. I'm not just like stuck in one place. And that's also why I love podcasts and like listening to people talk about creativity because it always kind of keeps the flow. And I don't know, I'm always kind of challenged by like something what somebody said or like a
Yeah.
new discovery. And yeah, that definitely plays into like the overall mental health aspect of my life, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So would you say writing and podcast is like kind of helps you refill your creative tank outside of the work that you do?
Yeah, absolutely. And also it just kind of like helps sort of manage what I'm putting in because
Hmm.
like for example, like over the past few weeks I've been heavily kind of watching news and that's really bad for my mental health. So
Yeah.
like the less free time I have for stuff like that, so I'm just gonna like fill it up with like yeah, like videos of like creatives and
Hmm.
podcasts where I can actually, control a little bit more what I put in, like what the
Yeah.
input is. So then the output hopefully is also healthier and I feel better, right? Like I just have to control because my brain is always like wondering about the next thing and I just
Yeah.
have to be very selective with like what I choose to go for. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And that kind of ties in with our conversation today about mental health and how creatives
Mm-hmm.
talk or actually not talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
So, is there something that you wish more creatives would admit about mental health and just being creative?
I don't know if it's necessarily about just creatives, but just like people in general, because we all have mental health and like there is still like a lot of stigma around that topic. And it's also kind of interesting for me because like I'm Polish, so like I live in Canada, but I'm kind of like still relatively connected to like what's happening in the culture there. And it's
Yeah.
very interesting, like the subject of like mental health in Poland has like a very different feel than like let's say in Canada or in the UK. Like
Hmm.
Poland still is like very heavily like I don't know, there's like a lot of like heaviness when people talk about mental health and it's still like quite a big like taboo subject.
Yeah.
It also is in Canada and like other countries, but I just kind of see the changes, like cultural changes and how that shifts the conversation.
Yeah.
But I don't know, like for me mental health just means, I mean, gosh, so many things to talk about because I feel like like yeah, everyone has mental health and like we all have challenges and the less we talk about it, the more stigma we create around it. And like for example, for me, one of the things that I'm trying to be like really open about is my bipolar disorder, which I was diagnosed with 4 years ago. And when I remember when I first got diagnosed with it, I could barely find anyone talking about it in a way that wasn't negative. Like I had a lot
Yeah.
of messaging telling me that like, oh, like I'm sorry, I feel sorry for you, like this is something really challenging and you should be like lucky to be alive, but you're not gonna thrive. And that kind of is something that I believed in for like so many years. And it's only in the past like year or so I actually discovered a lot of like creatives talk about mental health and bipolar disorder that is
Yeah.
very like empowering. And you can kind of realize that you don't have to be like constricted by a diagnosis of some sort. And in terms of like speaking about mental health and creativity, I mean, for me, there was like a very close link between how I feel mentally, physically, what my nervous system feels like, and how that impacts my creativity. I mean, I went through so many years of just like working while having like panic attacks and like crying because I was anxious and I didn't know where to go. And it just like impacted my first of all my mental health, yes, but also like my client work and my projects, like they were just very like I was just like scraping by, so
Yeah.
it's taken me a long time to kind of regulate my nervous system and kind of learn that I can even do that. And it's like a work that never ends. Like I have to kind of check in with myself every morning and set an intention and do like a mindfulness practice, whatever it is that helps you. I'm just like a strong believer that, we all can benefit from practices that can help us regulate emotions and nervous system.
I think that's useful because just like any other thing and just making it a lifestyle almost kind of stimulates your brain in multiple ways.
Yeah. Mhm.
When you're overwhelmed, what's the first thing that you try to let go of?
Well, I guess I'm just trying to let go of the overwhelm in the moment. So, it sounds like very simple and obvious, but like the first thing I would do is to actually take a lot of deep breaths because that
Mhm.
really regulates your nervous system like right away. I
Yeah.
just learned the other day that that's even faster than like taking any medication because medication needs time to like digest and like feel in your body, whereas meditation, I mean meditation too, but like just breathing just like regulates it, calms it down right away. So that's like an immediate thing that I would do when I'm overwhelmed. But I would also do like write down lists, like to-do lists, because
Yeah.
that also helps to kind of calm me down and be like, okay, I feel the overwhelmed because I don't know what I should be doing next because have so much on. But as
Yeah.
soon as you kind of like write it down and prioritize things like that can kind of alleviate a lot of that immediate kind of like oof feeling where you just don't know what to do next.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
also just kind of like things like working out also helps, and going for walks, journaling, like all those things, or like a meditation practice, mindfulness practices. There's like so much that we can do to actually kind of help with that. Like we don't always just have to go with our brain, with what our brain tells us. Like we can actually control it instead of the brain controlling us.
Yeah. Yeah. So are you the kind of creative who can never rest, or can you rest without feeling guilty and not work on your creative practice?
It's something that I'm learning. It like even just like 2, 3 years ago, I could not rest and like enjoy my time and actually be present in
Yeah.
something other than work. Because I felt guilty. I felt as a business owner, there's always something else that you could be doing. There's the work never ends. But again, kind of going back to like this whole mental health topic, like rest is so important, and just like
Mhm.
knowing how to relax and
Yeah.
kind of like unwinding your brain. So now I can relax and enjoy it and actually like plan for it and look forward to it, without feeling guilty. But it's been like a big lesson like to learn over time for me.
Yeah. So when you
Mhm.
look back at some of your earlier work, do you ever find patterns in what you're making, like emotional patterns or like similarities in the kind of stuff that you were making back then?
Like you mean similarities between like the client work and my like mental health? Like what would kind of trigger stuff like that?
Similarities in that and just kind of the illustrative work that you did. Can you spot it very clearly when you look back now?
I mean, I don't think it's necessarily about specific work more
Mhm.
than just like my undiagnosed disorder that would make me like very depressed and anxious. And like as soon as that kind of came on, I wasn't able to like, no matter whether that was like editorial or like mural work or whatever it was, like it was always like the same kind of feeling of like, I can't handle this.
Yeah.
I would say maybe like animation work is something that kind of triggers me sometimes because it can be very technical, and I'm not the most like technical person in After Effects. Like I know my tricks here and there, but I'm not someone that is like a senior animator with like years of experience who knows like all the plugins and all
Yeah.
the like expressions and stuff like that. So I know my around it, but as soon as like the project gets very complex, I can get a little nervous, and I'm still working on that. Even just like a few weeks ago, I got an animation project in, and the first thing that I felt was this kind of overwhelm. So I had to like actually do some like visualization practices to kind of imagine
Mhm.
myself doing the project and the client being happy, and just kind of create like new neural pathways in my brain or something to kind of walk myself through the project. And the client was really happy and the project went really well, but I had to do some like pre project work on myself before I started the project to kind of
Yeah.
go that way.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very interesting way of like affirming with yourself that
Hmm.
you can do it and this will be successful. Yeah,
Mhm.
that's so interesting. I've never done something like that. So maybe I
I
should
highly
I should
recommend it.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Even right now I'm working on a personal project, which is just a set of posters that about a series on Netflix. I won't disclose much.
Hmm.
But this is at the time of recording, and I'm doing that just because it's very like everyone's talking about it. It's not trendy per se, but it's relatable more than
Hmm.
trendy. And I was doing something and I was like, you know what? I don't know if I can do this, but let me just make some sketches here. And
Hmm.
maybe this visualization process will help me. So we talked about how business was slow post pandemic and even
Hmm.
some during the pandemic as well. How do you handle the anxiety of inconsistent income?
Yeah. Oh boy. I guess my answer to that would be to find consistency in the inconsistency, if that makes sense. So I'm
Mhm.
actually trying to like turn things upside down a little bit and like turn what is like unstable income and like not knowing when the next project comes in and all that. Like I'm actually trying to find strengths in it, and I'm really trying to think of myself as like any other business that exists. Like, it's not always the case for businesses for them to like just always have work on. Like I remember in my like production studio where I was working full time, if we didn't have client work on, then our like sales rep would go to agencies and talk to like commissioners and art directors and brands and agencies just about like potential opportunities in the future and like
Mm.
sell works. Basically, I'm trying to view my business as that. And I'm like, you know what? If I don't have client work right now, then let's create like a workflow of like other things that I could be doing to generate more business or to like plant seeds. So I would, do personal work, or I would do like new business outreach and like look for potential collaborators and reach out to them and try to set up meetings or calls or just try to be proactive. So that, and also what really helps with that is actually planning my week in advance. So I'm not just like waking up and kind of like seeing what the day has for me. It's more like what I have for the day planned, and then I actually kind of follow that schedule more or less. I mean, things can change here and there, obviously, because everything is dynamic, but at least I feel like I am a professional that like shows up every morning at my desk with an intention. Even if
Yeah,
the client work is quiet, I'm still working as part of my business. Like I have work to do, even
yeah,
though nobody is waiting for it. It's for my business, it's for me at the
yeah.
end of the day. So
You are waiting for it. Yeah,
yeah, so
yeah.
that's really helping with like this kind of anxiety of like inconsistent income, because I'm just trying to be like empowered by the flexibility of running your own business, and
Mhm.
not saying as a weakness but rather as a strength and no opportunity to like also like be in control of like how you want to spend your time at work and what kind of projects you want to be doing. So yeah,
Yeah,
it's definitely something that's been years in the making for me. Like I remember when I first went freelance and, I would just have no client work. I would just be like a walking anxious ball, just kind of like very sort of, yeah, like nervous because I'm like, oh my God, like, and then I had this whole thing where like it was attached to my self worth and I felt like I wasn't worth anything when client work wasn't happening. But now I'm like, you know what, the fact that work is quiet doesn't say anything about me as a
yeah,
person. No.
yeah, yeah. So, when we say you want to choose the kind of clients you work with, do you ever feel guilty about saying no to work? And how do you kind of deal with that?
To be honest, like it's very rare that I actually say no to work, because most of the time when clients come to me, they come for a very specific style. That is my illustration style. Like I would sometimes say no to a project if it's like a very, I don't know, like I'm just trying to remember what I declare. I guess I say no when I don't have capacity, right? So when I have other project going on, and it always I feel bad, like I always feel guilty. I always wish I could take it on. But again, I learned my lesson in the past where like I just need to have a balanced lifestyle. So if
Yeah,
I don't have capacity, I'm just gonna say no. Yeah, there is guilt, but there's also like, you know what, I'm choosing like the right thing. So because I know how bad things have gotten in the past when I wasn't doing that. So I have like a point of reference, that
yeah,
kind
and
of justifies it.
yeah, and honestly, if you're not being your 100% creative best at a project when you don't have capacity, it kind of just is counterintuitive.
Well, yeah,
So
the
that,
project will suffer in the end,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So, is there a point of reference for you when you know whether a project is draining you versus challenging you?
Ooh, it's a good question. Drain versus challenge. I mean, I guess I'm just trying to like always reframe things a little bit for myself. Like even if the project that comes my way is something that I might not be like super, interested in personally, or it's like a new subject or topic that I don't know much about. Like I try to I have this like really weird thing in my head. I remember like a few years ago, I was watching this documentary about this tribe in Africa that they they're known for like killing lions.
Mm.
And this is like very silly, but like basically they would kind of like gather in a group and do this kind of like chanting to kind of build themselves up to get the courage to like kill a lion. And now when I get like a project that feels kind of like a downer or like not interesting, I think about that tribe and I'm like, if they can kill a lion, then I can do this. And I just kind of like build myself up and I try to like find something exciting in the project to kind of keep me going. And I always can find something like a little string that will lead me to like more research and discovery and actually almost like generating a passion for it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah, no, it does. That's so interesting. Just thinking about that moment.
I know.
Yeah, my references are so weak when it comes to like stuff I watch on the TV because my
Hmm.
brain just like never remembers that stuff. So
Hmm.
even if
Hmm.
I wanted to do something like that, it would be very hard for me to do
Yeah,
to
you
do
maybe you
it.
have to find your own kind of way around it or something.
Yeah, that kind of takes me back to my days of watching National Geographic and just watching
Hmm.
like catching the snake in the wild documentaries, which would be like,
Hmm.
oh my God, I know so many snake facts now, which are so useless to me because
Yeah,
I don't live anywhere close to snakes.
to
So,
snakes.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, but it's helpful for when I travel and there's a snake in the city.
then you'll know what
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just don't panic and don't go close.
Absolutely.
Run
Yeah.
away. So that is so interesting. How do you define boundaries as a creative business owner when it comes to business and personal life?
I guess I have none. They don't exist. I mean, it's hard, right? Like to create boundaries. Do you mean like boundaries between my personal life and my work life, like work-life balance kind of thing?
Yeah.
Um, I mean, there are like obvious things. Like, for example, I just moved not too long ago, and now I have like a separate office for work.
Yeah.
Because before I had my like work set up in the living room, so that was a bit kind of like blending personal and work
Yeah.
life together.
Yeah.
Definitely having like a separate office space helps kind of on like a day-to-day basis.
Hmm.
I mean, you kind of just have to work at it, like if it's like after work hours, just like don't respond to emails right away. Like the clients can wait. Like it's been kind of like a learning curve of like you don't have to do everything right away. Like things can wait till the morning unless it's like time sensitive, which if it is, the clients will always tell you. Like no one is always expecting you to like respond within an hour, right?
Hmm.
Especially with like different time zones and stuff. Like it's just not sustainable. So I guess I'm just trying to be very protective of that time.
Yeah.
And also, actually planning time off. So like not just like if there's like a bank holiday, I actually take it off unless I can't because there is like a big project on. But I now actually will like book take time off. And because before I'd be like, oh, I didn't even know it's a bank holiday because nobody told me because I just work for myself from home. But now I actually subscribe to like a Canadian holiday calendar, so I know when
Mm.
they happen, and I actually take it off. And I'm like, you know what, I work as hard as like other people that work in house or in different companies. So like, why can't I take this day off?
Yeah, that's a good tip. I'm gonna add that to my
Mhm.
calendar because some of the
Mhm.
days I'm like, what? I did not know this existed, and people
Yeah.
are off today, and it's the long weekend, and I'm
And you
still
feel weird
working.
because everyone
Yeah.
else is doing fun things and you're just like stuck in front of your
Oops.
screen. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I kind of stopped doing that now a little bit. So that helps.
Yeah.
Just
Do you
trying.
think
Yeah.
that kind of helps you with a creative burnout too?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because like when you're not working, you're actually filling up that cup, right? Like even
Yeah.
if it's just me binging like a TV show on the weekend, like sometimes my body just needs to do that,
Yeah.
and then I feel recharged like after the weekend. So I'm just trying to be a bit more intuitive as well about like listening to my body and like knowing what it needs. Sometimes it just needs a nap, which before I would feel so guilty about napping. I'm like, oh my God, like I would be like, oh, I'm lazy if I have to nap. But I'm like, no,
Yeah.
like my body just needs a little break and it's okay, you know? So there's a
Yeah.
lot of like kind of kindness towards oneself that I'm trying to practice.
Yeah, I think it's also about kind of finding the balance between that structure, but also because you run your own thing, you can also be spontaneous with some of the
Mm,
decisions that
mm.
you're making just to go back to your creative process and your creative practice and to bring in your best. Yeah, that's inspiring to me because having felt the burnout, it kind of takes away from your process a lot.
Oh, and there's like the taxing on your body, on your brain, on your mental health, like all those things.
Yeah.
It's like it's taken me like many burnouts to like learn that actually you can take steps towards not having them. And I'm sure they'll still happen here and there, but at least like I am like proactively trying to like not have them, right?
Yeah.
Trying to do things, yeah.
Yeah. What's been one of the most obscure things that has helped you get out of a burnout?
Ooh, one of the most obscure things. I just like love going to like coffee shops and eating pastries.
I love that. I love that.
I
Who
don't know,
doesn't
playing with
love?
my dog. Like I love playing with my dog and just kind of like interrupting my brain with like things that are cute. And I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, we talked about finding the point where you're leading to a creative burnout. Does that also happen on a regular day-to-day basis when you know and you can tell that your mental health is spiraling and now you need to stop? Can you tell the difference now?
Oh yeah, I mean, I just try not to even get to that point as much as I can. Like I honestly, it's just like sticking to like a regular working hours, and even if like if I excuse me, if I have to like work on the weekend sometimes, I'll still make sure that, if I worked on the weekend, then the next week I'll just take a day off in the middle of the week just to
Hmm.
like go shopping or go to a cafe and have a pastry, like just to like balance things out. If like on one week I feel like the extra weight,
Hmm.
um the next week I'll try to like balance it out, or I'll tell my partner like, listen, I have a lot going on, can you like help with other things a little bit more this week? Or
Yeah.
just try to kind of know when you're at capacity. It's almost like a skill to notice that in your body. But now I listen to it, I don't just like ignore it, because I've like, yeah.
So, how has your view of success changed now that you run your own creative practice?
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess it's like important to like actually define for yourself what success means to you, because I for the longest time was like running on like other people's ideas of what it means, and I would just try to make my life fit that mold, which ultimately like always brings you to suffering, because if you're trying to be something you're not or somebody you're not, like it will never feel like fulfilling, and you'll always be chasing the next thing, and you'll always feel, or at least that's how I was like, I would always feel like this discontent. Like there's
Yeah.
always there's always like the bigger client. There's always like more money you can make. There's always like higher profile thing, or like more followers, or whatever it is. So I guess I just kind of like started to like actually ask myself questions of like what success means to me. I was able to kind of like narrow it down to like, I would love to do more work about like, obviously like money is always like one of those ingredients where, especially if you live in like an expensive city, like you have to just make a
Yeah.
certain amount. So that's one of the things. But I'm also looking at what kind of clients I'd like to work with. What kind, like I would love to do more work around like mental health and kind of advocacy work around that. So once I was able to kind of like define for myself like what success means to me, then I can actually create a plan of action that will hopefully lead me to that. And then I don't wake up in the middle of the night being like, oh, there's someone else that's like more successful than me, because my success is so unique to me. Like no one can compete with that, right? Because it's our own. Like we decide what it is for us. So again, long answer to your question, but I don't know. I just feel like it's when you kind of define for yourself what it is, it's easier to not get like bogged down by this, like by other people and like trying to compete with the rest of the world, which you'll never be able to like outdo the world, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
No, I absolutely agree with that because it's kind of like the imposter syndrome and how you deal with that in
Mhm.
situations when it happens. So it's kind of like you not compare yourself to someone who's been doing it for 2 decades. You compare yourself to your past
Your
self.
journey, yeah, like looking
Exactly.
back, it's like, am I evolving? Is my work getting better? Am I
Mhm.
working with different, like, is my practice kind of making me a better creative, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
mhm.
So do you ever feel like you're kind of falling behind, and what kind of pulls you out of that mindset?
Yeah, like I do, I mean there's just kind of going back to that point of like success and like looking at other people. I mean, there is always like new graduates every year who come,
Yeah,
like I just feel like every year like the quality level of like people that graduate from schools is just getting better and better. And like obviously like this whole like AI conversation is adding even more pressure. Like how can you outdo that? Like how can you stay on top of your game? I don't know. Again, like I guess it kind of like for me boils down to like going inwards and kind of like defining again what it is that I'm trying to accomplish, and try to also like be inspired by others rather than like threatened. Be like, oh, if this person is doing this amazing work, let me be inspired and like turn like the envy or jealousy into something that's actually productive and something that I can like live up to, right?
yeah,
In
yeah,
my head.
yeah.
I heard this quote somewhere where like no one can ever like block you from success, only you can do that. And I believe that. I feel like if there are other people that kind of are paving the path for like illustration in like a certain industry or whatever, let that be your like roadmap. Like follow that. Like don't feel threatened by it, but actually embrace it and be grateful that people are kind of doing that.
Yeah, yeah, that's on the same nerve as what I think and what I believe in is that collaboration is greater than competition.
Mm.
And once you start seeing and viewing your work and others' work like that, it automatically just leads to that magic moment.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I would just define it as like moving from like a scarcity mindset into like the mindset of abundance and like knowing that there's enough for everybody,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So we touched a little about AI, and I'm curious, is there a way that AI is creeping into your workflow as of today?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the obvious one would be like ChatGPT that I kind of use
Yeah.
as like a research assistant, I would say. Like it really
Mm,
saves me a lot of time. Even just sometimes with like idea generations when I like do like preliminary research into like a new subject, I can kind of like
mm,
very quickly get a lot of information that's very focused.
yeah.
Um, I tried to like experiment with some like image generation software, like was it like Da Vinci or Vinci or something? I don't remember. There's like one where you just like type in prompts and it generates like photorealistic kind of imagery. And in my work, I use a lot of like reference images just in general for like illustration. And that was kind of interesting because I could again like type very specific prompts specific to the subject, but I never actually used it in a project live.
Yeah.
I just kind of experimented with it. Yeah, it's something that I might look into in the future. I would say like realistically, like ChatGPT is probably like the one that I use the most right now.
Yeah. So is there anything that excites you about it at all?
Yeah, I think what excites me about AI is this idea that like it can really help us find new ways for our work to exist. Like there is this like illustration duo named Craig and Carl,
Mm,
and I saw them using, I think it was like Adobe Firefly to generate like a photorealistic image of one of their designs as a stained glass window.
mhm.
And just to like visualize it like that can actually be like a very direct step towards actually making that happen, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like AI can like help us visualize things in new ways and kind of open the roof for like new possibilities and maybe like speed up the process a little bit and just like help us imagine things. Actually, I have like a really good story about that too. I was
Yeah.
actually just asking ChatGPT the other day. I saw this like trend where you like write down your goals for like your life and then you
Mhm.
enter that into ChatGPT and you ask for it to like generate like a day in the life of like future you based on these goals. Like it created this story that like I actually started like tearing up when I was reading it, and
Yeah.
it like inspired me so much because I'm like, oh my god, like that could be my life. And I had like a whole new energy that kind of I embodied after reading something that AI generated, which is so weird, but I'll take it if it helps me. Like, why
Yeah,
not?
no.
You
I
know?
haven't I haven't seen this trend. Maybe I should dive into
I'll
that
send you
more.
the
Yeah.
prompt. It's
Yeah.
great.
So that kind of ties into my other question where I think so many creatives, while these trends are going on, and we recently saw the Barbie trend go
Hmm.
live too.
Hmm.
How do
Hmm.
you kind of feel AI kind of mimicking illustrative styles or even franchise?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's where I kind of get a little like nervous because I mean, there's like so much AI use that's like just illegal, right? Like AI models are being trained on work that's like illegally scraped by like bots or whatever online. And who knows, like maybe my work is training some AI right now somewhere in the world. And like
Yeah.
I might not even know about it. And then somebody will create work based on my style. There are certain websites where you can check if your work has been used somewhere. I think one is called like haveibeentrained.com, and you can like upload your work and see if any like databases have it. I just hope as a creator myself that these will be regulated properly, and if somebody is using your work to train AI, like you should be compensated for it, and you should also like give permission. It shouldn't just be like illegally taken.
Yeah.
um, and I guess it's in the hands of the people that make these laws and AI software.
Mhm.
I do think that AI generated illustration will have an impact on our industry, and it already is having an impact. Part of me, the hopeful part of me, hopes that this will actually make human-made illustration more valuable and even more unique and appreciated.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Here's hoping, right? Yeah.
Yeah. If you could train an AI model only on your work and then generate illustrations or even just mood boards or a starting point with, would you like that or would you feel like you're losing that process part?
It will be like interesting to try. Part of me would feel that like I would be sort of like losing a bit of my own creativity, right? Like there was
Yeah.
this like famous and like unfortunately famous case of like pentagram training AI model on like illustrations that they created, and then they generated like 500 icons or something
Mhm.
with AI. And I feel weird about that. I feel like, yeah, like obviously we can do it, but is it the right thing to do? Like, I don't think so. I mean, they blamed it on like the budget and,
Yeah.
saying that like the client's budget wouldn't allow for like an illustrator to generate like 500 icons. But then you're like, well, why couldn't you just then say to them, listen, your budget is not like feasible, instead of being like, you know what, let's train. I don't know, it's like a weird conversation that
Yeah.
people have like different takes on. But I don't know, I just feel like this trend of like training AI models on like images is just, it takes away something very magical that is human imagination and creativity. And I would rather like to rely on AI as like a tool helping hand rather than something that like generates the final outcome, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So do you think the industry is, I think it already is split, but do you think it's split between like human made and AI made labels? Kind of like, I guess, packaging, which it says, oh, this is organic versus this is
Mm-hmm.
processed.
Mm-hmm. I think so. I mean, I guess that Pentagram project was like one of the few that I saw where like the client actually used like the AI generated imagery as like the final output outcome that was like used across like a branding
Yeah.
project or something. But I don't know, I feel weird when I go on these like AI websites and you can like choose like illustration style and then you can just use that model to generate stuff. Like I don't know, I feel weird about it. I've never done it. I've never really seen other people properly use it. I guess it's kind of like a bit of like stock illustration conversation too, right? Like
Yeah.
stock versus like original. So I guess I mean, it's definitely here to stay. We can't fight it. I think it's about embracing it rather than like fearing it, and also like knowing how to use it to our advantage rather than like something that can take something away from us, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, that is such a great point. Yeah, to close out, I think what is one piece of work that you felt deeply vulnerable and connected with lately?
It's actually work that I haven't published yet, but I wrote this essay about my bipolar disorder and kind of like I guess talking about it openly in a new way that was really hard for me to do because I had to kind of
Mhm.
go on my own journey of like acceptance around it and all that. But it was basically an essay that I wrote as like a submission for this like magazine that yeah, it was about like mental disabilities basically, and it took me like many days to like write it. I would come to it and I would write for maybe like half an hour, then like walk away, come back to it next day because it was just like too close for me to like I was just like very like emotionally stimulated by it. But in a long run, it actually like really helped me kind of like process some of like my own work around it. And I guess I just now I'm working on like an illustration for that article or this
Mhm.
essay. So yeah, that's very vulnerable, one of the most vulnerable things that I've done because it's so revealing. And like not everybody is like ready to kind of read or like consume content like that. Like I know
Yeah,
that some people might not be into it, but I also know the other side of the coin where I know it can help somebody, even if it's just like one person. And to me,
yeah,
then that's always worth it. Yeah, just
yeah.
kind of, I guess all that would be an example of that.
How do you define success for yourself?
I guess honestly, like in the quickest, my quickest answer would be like success to me means that I wake up excited for my day every day, or like most days, like I wake up and I'm like, I know what my purpose is. I feel aligned with it. I feel it in my body. I feel it. Like I just show up and kind of keep chipping at it. Like to me, that's success. Yeah.
Yeah. Where can people find you and get in touch with you?
Yeah, my website, gustofwindstudio.com, gust underscore of wind underscore studio. And I also have a Substack newsletter, which is wind and wonder substack.com.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you so much, Matt, for this insightful conversation around mental health and design and just running your own creative practice here in Canada. So I was so happy that we had this conversation.
Great. Thanks for having me.
I'll see you on the next one.